Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Mokono Man at YouTube with another model video. We are doing a Q&A session, and unfortunately I fielded the questions last week and we didn't really get any sufficient responses besides a few memes or jokes. And this has always left me in a predicament of doing this for a few years. If we run out of questions, how do we carry on? And what I've decided to do is finish with the video anyway and talk about some common questions I come across, as well as some interesting points I thought I would pass on that people wouldn't quite think to ask or not quite aware of. So the video will carry on regardless, and I hope you guys enjoy it. If it's not quite up to scratch or interesting, let us know in the comment section below and something can be done about it. So I've got about 6 talking points. First one, going through forums, threads, Facebook, whatnot, I normally see which model should I buy. Now normally people say there is no stupid questions. Unfortunately this one is very silly. It shows that you're very indecisive. Normally you like a subject, you get a gut feeling, you look at a box art, you buy something on impulse. The idea of buying models and building, particularly if it's a first one or just a mental build, the gut feeling of that looks interesting, that looks inspiring, I don't even know what it is, buying it and exploring it is completely perfectly acceptable and ideal. Sometimes some of the most fun and ideal ways of buying a model is seeing a reference picture, a box art, an announcement, and just jumping on it without much thoughts and just thoroughly enjoying it, opposed to saying I like a certain subject, Tank, Gundam, going out of your way and finding it. So if you just like the look of the box art or whatever and grabbing it, do it, man. No problem behind that. If it's too complex, if it's not your thing, it can be shelved, and checking out the runners and looking at the instructions to just double check if you really want it just goes a bit further if you only have a limited amount of skills or don't like overly complex models or overly expensive models. Price, looks, subjects, if it all lines up, grab it. How to improve. A lot of people start in the hobby and they've only got a very small selection of tools, skills, whatnot, and they go on social media, forums, Facebook, and they see work done by champions and whatnot. And you could definitely still see the skill gap between where you're at and where you desire to be. Now, unfortunately, as you improve and go further, you just aim higher and higher. So where you want to be and where you currently are, those two parallel points will always remain parallel and never meet, but you can always get yourself to a much higher standard. A lot of people collect resources, comment and look at a lot of pictures, a lot of videos, YouTube tutorials. That's all good and fine and said. But the best way to just push your hobby forward is to actively model, find time, schedule your time to model, sit down and build. And you may push out a couple of undesirable projects, and that may lower the self-esteem a bit, but occasionally take some low fruit, build a very easy model, paint it in a very easy manner that's all within or below your skill level, make it clean, beautiful, fantastic. And that just has a way of just improving your self-esteem, and once your self-esteem improves, you're eager to try new things, new techniques, new methods, explore, experiment. But then always, when you go from project to project, take a step back or two, do something easy, and it's a good way to reflect where you're currently at. That might be just a out-of-the-box build, a basic paint job, and then you can go, oh, I don't see any visual faults, or it kind of looks pleasing, or where I want to definitely be. Looking at tutorials and inspiration is fine, getting ideas from them and applying it to your model, but if you're not actively modeling often, that could be a problem, and it could be quite easy to not be inspired to build. You just want to sit there, play a video game or play on social media constantly. But if you schedule some time that you otherwise would have been watching TV or social media and go, I will model for 20 minutes on this day at this time once a week, at first you're sort of a bit melancholy or ho-hum about it, but once you start getting into it, you might have some nice music playing or a YouTube video playing in the background. You do have a tendency of just really getting into it and just going quite through it. If you sort of hit a snag in the build and you're not inspired to continue going it, it's okay to box it, crack something new open, and just do a quick project or an easier project to rebuild your inspiration and drive to model. If you're burnt out to the stage where you've built way too much of the same model or the same styling kits or the same Gunpla, try a different project. If you do nothing but Gunpla, have a go at a tank or a car or a plane. If you've done nothing but styrene, consider trying a resin piece or something that's just completely off the wall. If you do nothing but airbrushing, consider doing a one-off hand paint job. Mix it up a bit to keep it spiced and interesting. And as you constantly, and the more often you model and the more projects you finish, you will gradually improve through solid effort instead of research, watching, research. Build one model and pat yourself on the back. So that's a really, really good aspect of the more you do it, you won't quite lose it, you will get better. Competitions in the Gunpla Builders World Cup. I see a lot of people from very talented modelers and people that are very well established to beginners who follow a competition, a Gunpla Builders World Cup, whatever, and the event may be very local to them, or they have the means to go there, visit it in person, check it out, and they can enter, but they don't quite have the self-esteem or the encouragement or too fearful to enter. That's the wrong way to look at competitions and the wrong point of view. Look at competitions, the Gunpla Builders World Cup, all that as more of a social experience. They're a lot of fun. It's really good to drive you to want to model more, make modeling based friends in person, as well as improving your hobby. Build a kit or bring a kit to enter with your intention. May not be up to standards. One or two people may criticize it because there are just some nasty people in the hobby, though you'll find most people that are really deep in the community are quite supportive. Upon request or asking, feedback can be given by some of the more experienced modelers or even the judges, and they give you an idea or a path or a strategy on how to improve and go about getting better in that competition, or aiming to win, or aiming to meet whatever goal that you have in mind. It's just ideal to communicate at these events and talk to people, and the best way to make friends, communicate and be involved in the event is entering a model. When you enter a model, people want to have a look at it, talk to you about it, and then you've got that connection that everyone's entered a piece and they've got something in common to come together and have dinner or talk or even just friend each other on social media or whatnot. So definitely enter. If you're a bit socially awkward and you're not into openly talking to people and hanging out and whatnot, enter the model, hang around, and that just opens dialogue to people to approach you and somehow get into the conversation. And once you start entering regularly, you automatically build the drive that you want to improve a little here, a little there, and just show off pretty much what you have, and that's completely acceptable. So if you're local to any competition and you've watched and you've got the drive to enter but you don't think you're good enough, that's not quite the right approach. Definitely enter, and people encourage you at least for your effort. There's no need to feel embarrassed. There's no model that's bad enough that it will be rejected. I have a tendency of looking at the rules to see that, what your inspiration or ideas don't cross paths to what the restrictions are of the event. So just go in and see how you go, and yeah, make records, take photos, post it up, share it around, and that just opens more points of communication to be with the community. And once you're more involved in the community, inspired and talking to people, you want to model more, and as you model more, you get better. Choosing paints. Now, within the hobby, there is just a plethora, there's a whole spectrum of different brands and types of paints, from acrylics to lacquers, polyurethanes, you name it. They all have advantages and disadvantages. Some people like some over other colours, styles, whatnot. The most important thing with colours and paints, and even if there is a particular one you do really want to try, it's what's available to you local first, or what you're able to get if you buy them online or whatnot. So you buy the paints that are most likely available to you first, and that other people local to you have a tendency of using, and try to make it work. If there's a few, try each of them and stick to what you like the look of the finish the most, and what's most enjoyable and easy for you to use. If you have a large selection, and even if you're comfortable using a type of paint, every time you go to the hobby store and you pick up a new project, have a habit of just passing with that $4 or $5 extra every time, and have a go at using every type of brand, just to be familiar with maybe there is something better. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side, and this other brand of paint just goes smoother through the airbrush, or applies flatter and nicer via the paintbrush. Because there's always new products coming out, and there's always older products discontinuing. And in the rare cases like Humbrol, formulas change, and sometimes they change for the better or for the worse. Citadel paints by Games Workshop is a very good example where in the 90s it was an amazing world-leading paint, and to this day they dry too quickly, and they're just pretty much considered akin to cheap poster paints, and don't really hold a candle to Vallejo or other competitive markets. So be brave, have a tendency of experimenting, and also check out and try cheaper alternatives if it happens to work or not in non-hobby paint markets. Pla plating. A lot of people also ask me around, how do you pla plate? Pla plate are styrene plastic sheets, 1/2 mil to 1 mil thick. You cut shapes and you apply them to your kit. And people have a tendency of looking at a few top winning champion Gunpla Builder World Cup champions, or scratch builders in big scratch building sci-fi groups or IPMS competitions, and go, these guys have won, this is a type of model I'm familiar with, this is the only way to go about it. Not quite. With styrene plating, it's a raw material, and every single individual different model has a different way of approaching it. Some people see a work in progress, they copy it and they put their own spin to it. Other people just start hacking into material, and they're playing and bashing it and working it in their work with what products they have on hand, until it just sort of fits in with their work. If your mind works in a certain way where you play with the material and you've got an idea how to cut it up and utilize it, that works out. And if you just have a bit of an inkling, stick to your inkling and have a go and have a try. If it fails, go back to what we're just about to talk about. If you have no idea and you've got a spare piece of material, some cutting tools, and glue, and you don't know what to do with it, the best idea is to look up as many work in progress pictures, search for some tutorials, whatnot, see how other people apply it, have a bit of a think about it, and once it starts making sense of how you can chop it up, bash it on your models and neaten it up, go for it. And even if you are already established to utilizing plastic in your modeling, and you're looking at other tutorials and work in progresses and whatnot, sometimes you could see an idea that someone else is doing, or their approach, and it just changes your approach, and you could see that's easier, that's more interesting, that's more detailed, that makes more sense. And don't be afraid to try your established method. And something that I should have talked about in how to improve and buying model kits One tool that most modelers always pretty much neglect is Google, and Google for searching, asking for the right questions. If you wish to know about pla plating or paints or anything, and you just go on social media and go, how do I pla plate, or how do I do this, and someone might just plaster one tutorial they may be aware of on your shoulders. If you ask not just one question but multiple questions, how do I pla plate? How do I utilize pla plate in my modeling? How do I cut pla plate? How do I cut styrene plate? How do I utilize styrene sheeting in my models? Ask different questions, see what websites, forums, videos, picture tutorials come up, have a read and have a look. Don't ask one question on Google, ask multiple questions using the same phrase, because you don't know what tags are utilized in the tutorials. And the more you spread it out, the more answers you are very likely to find. So some people just have a tendency of asking and hoping an answer comes to them. Other people who are more inquisitive, they just have the idea of I'm going to go searching until I find an answer. They may talk to other modelling friends. And if you have closer friends that you can PM, talk direct or whatnot, have a tendency of cracking their brain. Just say, how do you chop up and use styrene on a particular project or a particular way? And they'll give you their alternative and their answers and their methods. And it's absolutely, completely cool. The last one is resin. And a lot of people, they've built, quite a few styrene kits, and they feel they want to go up to the next level, have a go at resin modelling, and it can be a bit intimidating because it's a different material. It glues, builds, paints differently. It has a very strict link of rules, especially the health implications of the airborne dust can cause respiratory issues, and you have to clean it thoroughly or otherwise the paint won't stick to it. Have a look at a few tutorials, a few builds. I've got a few on this channel, but generally once you're aware of what tools to use and how to go about it, how to wet sand it properly or wear a mask, buy a cheap project and attempt it. See how you go. It's not so much just watching, but definitely just biting the bullet and try it. And sometimes you think it's scary, it's hard. It's the same with airbrushing, it's the same with scratch building, but every time you find when you overcome the confidence and you give it a go, and you've given it a go a few times, you realise it's actually a lot more easier than it is, and it's more of a mental gap to overcome than a physical one of learning skills, because all this is just learning a few sets of skills, applying it multiple times until you improve. And that's the same with resin. A few tips I definitely will pass on is the paint always does have a harder tendency of etching on. So once you apply the primer, once you apply the paints, allow it to chemically harden, or otherwise you'll find it'll scratch and chip quite easy. So once you prime it, allow it a day or so to set. Once you paint it, allow it to sit for a week just so it chemically hardens and it's as scratch resistant and strong as possible. So once you start assembling it, it's less likely to scratch, less likely to crack or chip. When you do the sub-assembly, assemble it and pin it in a way that it could support under its own weight, use as many pins as possible, and it could just snap together and just hold itself. If it holds itself very, very easily, then once you paint it, it's a tendency of a little glue, put the two surfaces together and it's nice and hard. If you quite haven't pinned it right where it doesn't support itself too well, if it's loose or if the fit's a bit weird, take the pins out, putty the holes, let it set, re-drill. Time consuming, yes, but the results will be worthwhile. Then you're mucking around with this after it's painted and you've got a tendency of scratching or damaging the paint. I've learnt this from Matt Mosaic, top resin modeler. I've made this mistake a couple of times myself, but once I've overcome that issue, my resin work has definitely improved twofold, especially the garage kits where they have a tendency of being very, very top heavy. I hope that was some interesting advice and a few different tips to think about. I'm sorry that there wasn't a lot of questions to cover, but at least we've got a video together and something to think about, something to watch and something to consider when we're modelling. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, and stay tuned. Check out some of my social media links. We've got Facebook. There is quite a few bits of content that goes up there on the very regular. And we'll just leave it at that. If you have any questions or comments, I do answer any comment that's in a form of a question and do generally enjoy engaging with you guys. Catch you guys later.